Yo guys, welcome to the Zelda fiction. Today we are gonna see, what if Naruto got born as a god and fell in love with Kaguya? Part 2. If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe, so without further ado, let's get into the video. When things go right. Kaguya was the first one to wake up and she thought about making Naruto breakfast after he had fallen asleep right after their love-making session. But she realized something. She didn't really know how to use any of the devices Naruto had in his kitchen. Hell, she was a goddess, but she couldn't figure her way around a kitchen. What does this switch do? Kaguya mused silently as she turned the knob, and it did nothing at first, but after a few moments she could feel the element warming up on the stove top. As she wandered around the kitchen she looked for something to cook, only to realize that Naruto didn't have much in the way of actual food, so she'd have to go buy some more. So that's exactly what she did after writing a note telling Naruto where she was going after turning off the oven. Naruto woke up a few hours later to a cold other side of the bed, and he looked around to see if he could find Kaguya, but he couldn't. So he got out of bed and saw the note on the nightstand and began reading it. Hey Naruto, I've gone to the market to pick up some food, all you have is that horrendous instant ramen stuff, but I shall be back soon. The note read in her handwriting. Sure enough, a few moments after he finished reading the note, space started to distort in front of him before a horizontal black line with cracks running up and down, it opened in front of him. I'm back Naruto, you'd be surprised at how hard it is to find the market here. I had to wander around town like a normal person to not freak everyone out. Kaguya said as she set her bags down on the table. Though something amazing happened when I got there, a lot of the merchants recognized me as the wife of the savior and their Kage and just gave me what I asked for. Seems our fight did come with some perks. She mused with a soft giggle. Naruto rubbed the sleep from his eyes and chuckled a little at this. If he had known, he would have gone with her and insisted on paying, but he wasn't going to look a gift horse in the mouth. Well, good morning to you Kaguya, and that's awesome Dadabayo. So what's for breakfast? Naruto asked curiously as he sat down at the dining room table. The guy let the stove heat up before turning back to Naruto. Well, just your typical breakfast for now with scrambled cheese, eggs, bacon, toast, and pancakes. She said simply as she turned back to the oven, thinking it might be a good idea to put on an apron so the bacon didn't pop her. She might have tough skin, but that didn't mean she liked pain, at least the type that comes from being popped with grease, she thought with a quiet pervy giggle as she put on the apron over her stark naked front, giving Naruto a wonderful view to enjoy. Naruto held back a nosebleed that threatened to force its way out, but he had a busy day dealing with paperwork, so he couldn't have any more fun for now. That sounds good to me, and it's already smelling good. Naruto commented. He normally just cooked a cup of ramen or 12 and went about his day, but he would let her cook for him. As much as he loved ramen, it did get kind of boring and stale after eating it so much. Naruto got up to put the extra that Kaguya wasn't using in the fridge before wrapping his arms around her waist. Kaguya hummed a soft tune as she cooked breakfast for the both of them, leaning into Naruto's grip, feeling content and warm, feeling her heart rate picking up a bit at the intimate touch. You're rather more affectionate than I at first expected, but I like it. She mused softly, turning and angling her head so they could share a soft kiss. Naruto chuckled a bit and kissed her back. Well, there's a lot of backed up loving of someone I haven't done, so I will show you that. Naruto said softly before a thought popped into his head as he realized there was still something left undone. Hey, when would you like to have our wedding? You kind of did assert yourself as my maid and fiancé. Naruto mused out loud, causing Kaguya to gain a thoughtful look on her face at his question. Kaguya thought about it for a moment and came up with a good idea. Well, how about this Christmas coming up in a couple of months? I always wanted a white winter wedding, my last one was in the spring. Kaguya said with a bit of a sad tone to her voice. Naruto gave her waist a light squeeze, bringing her out of her getting darker thoughts before he nodded, rubbing his stubble against her cheek, causing her to giggle at the sensation. That's fine by me, no. Did that tickle? Naruto asked with a bit of a devious tone to his voice, and Kaguya froze as she tried to escape from Naruto's grip, but it was a vice around her waist. Kaguya knew that she was in for it now. Oh, don't you dare. Kaguya said as she rotated in Naruto's grip to face him as he pinned her up against the counter softly and began tickling her with his stubble in his hands, causing Kaguya to burst into giggles and flailing. Naruto chuckled a bit deviously as he watched Kaguya flail and giggle at his ministrations before he suddenly stopped, allowing Kaguya to get her breath. You're ticklish. I shall take advantage of that whenever I want now. Naruto smiled softly as he let her go. Kaguya pouted lightly at his teasing, knowing he would keep his promise to keep abusing her with tickling, but since it was Naruto, she wasn't too upset about it. Fine, but only if I get to use you as my pillow whenever I want. Kaguya said with finality, and Naruto nodded. Then an idea popped into her head. Hey, Naruto, I was thinking about how we first met and I'd like to propose something to you. I really don't have any actual combat training, and you probably would like to learn more about your sage powers, right? She asked, causing Naruto to nod, but look at her curiously, him piecing the meaning together. Naruto looked like a light bulb had gone off in his head as he figured out what she meant. You want to train with each other, right? That's fine by me, but we have to clear it by TS, Naruto started to say before he remembered he was now the Hokage, so he didn't have to clear it with anyone, so he grinned and nodded to give her his answer. Alright, that's fine by me, and I know somewhere where we can train in relative privacy. Naruto said with a small smile. He knew he couldn't convince the Anbu tail that was tailing him to leave them entirely alone, as they were there and weren't allowed to let him leave farther than they could see for security reasons. Kaguya grinned a bit as she figured out a way to evade their personal security detail and still stay safe. She leaned close to Naruto, knowing the Anbu were just outside the Hokage mansion, but she didn't want them hearing her plan. Well, you know how I can travel between dimensions, right? I don't need the Sharingan to do that, it's one of my intrinsic powers. She whispered with a conspiratorial grin as the realization dawned upon Naruto as to what she meant. Naruto nodded at what she was saying, as what she said made sense, they were still safe, and any new skills or techniques they created would have no chance of being found, except for maybe by Sasuke. Alright, 1 second. Naruto said softly, creating his signature cross-hand sign as 10 clones popped into existence and nodded, knowing what they needed to do. One took off towards the Hokage tower with his robes on and his hat on his back. The clones shunshed to the Hokage tower as the Anbu followed Naruto's clone. Right as we pan back to Naruto and Kaguya, the black crack in the fabric of space was stitching itself back up. Kaguya put Naruto down on the sand, as this was the best dimension she had that wasn't too hot or too cold. Alright, now that we're here, what not? She hadn't really thought of what to do once they actually got here, it was a kind of a spur-of-the-moment plan. Naruto gained a thoughtful look on his face as he thought about how they should start their training with each other, then he came up with an idea. Well, how about a spar, so that we can find out where both of us are really at? Cause our first fight was with my team on its last legs, with low chakra, limiting what we could do. Naruto observed as he thought about the battle. Kaguya nodded in agreement, even then she wanted to see what they could do at full capacity, but Madara had taken most of their fight out of them. Alright, that's fine by me, let's try this out. She said as she started undoing her kimono, catching Naruto off guard. Naruto's eyes widened a bit in surprise at what she was doing. Wow. What are you doing? Naruto exclaimed as he turned around, even though they were engaged, it would still take some time getting used to her undressing in front of him. Kaguya beat her head curiously at Naruto, who was blushing, peeking at her. What do you mean, Dana? She asked curiously, causing Naruto to turn around just as he turned around. As he looked her over once, he noted that Kaguya actually had made a white bone version of Madara's combat armor before he entered Rakuto Senin mode. A silver shirt and pair of high-water pants akin to the Jonin outfit with a silver metal mesh underclothes on as well. Naruto let out a breath of relief that he wouldn't have to fight Kaguya with her nude or nearly nude, that would be too distracting to him. I thought you were going to spar with me in your underwear, Naruto trailed, chuckling sheepishly while rubbing the back of his head. Kaguya gained a small grin on her face, a black portal opening behind her as Naruto was distracted, another one opening right behind Naruto as her hands reached around him. One hand was under his chin and the other was draped over his shoulder. Oh. Would you have preferred that, Dana? She whispered with a bit of a teasing sultry tone in Naruto's ear. Naruto's eyes widened as he registered what had just happened, causing him to jump away from her on pure instinct trained over the years. Wow. Kaguya. Let's just stay like this is better, yeah better for now, trailed unconvincingly. The way he was saying it was just further proving Kaguya's point, as he seemed to be trying to convince himself more than her. Kaguya just let out a soft laugh before stretching out a hand towards Naruto, giving him the come at me hand motion, signaling she was ready to spar. I'm ready whenever you are, Naruto, Dana. Kaguya said softly, her eyes changing from their normal impassive expression to one of hardened determination as she mimicked the stance Naruto was using. Byakugan. She thought to herself as the veins on the side of her head became pronounced, signaling she had activated one of the bloodlines that had originated from her. Naruto drew a kunai from his thigh holster, not moving an inch after that, then began a stare down between the two godly powerhouses. Okay, that's gonna make things harder if I remember correctly from my battle with Neji. The Byakugan has 360-degree field of view, Naruto thought nervously to himself as a slow breeze passed by them. Kaguya had 3 times the visual range of most Hyuga, being the progenitor of the bloodline after all, so she could see every detail of Naruto. As the breeze stopped, Kaguya launched forward towards Naruto, as if a proverbial starter gun was fired. On guard, Naruto. She exclaimed, bringing her bone sword from above Naruto, starting her offensive. Naruto's eyes widened a bit as he almost didn't see her move. Was she actively trying to prevent from killing us during the war and resisting the Ito Tensei? She wasn't this fast during our first battle. Naruto thought frantically himself, his muscles instinctively going up to block the bone sword as the sword came into contact with his kunai. Sparks flew. Kaguya spun 360 degrees, causing Naruto to let his kunai drop into his other hand in a reverse grip to block the sword strike from his right side. Come on. You're gonna have to do better than that. Kaguya taunted jokingly as she then started swinging with unrefined power towards him. Naruto noted this as well, it seemed she really hadn't had any formal combat training and had just slaughtered the warlords of her time with pure power. We'll see who's tapping out. It's not gonna be me. Naruto said with a smirk as his eyes suddenly gained an orange rings of sage mode and the bar pupil like a toad's on his eyes as he had subconsciously mastered taking in nature chakra over time, sort of like Sakura's Byakume no In. Reaching for Kaguya's overextended arm, he grabbed it. Swinging her overhead with ease, laying Kaguya flat on her back, causing Kaguya to cough a bit as the air was knocked from her lungs. Kaguya clenched her teeth as she rolled out of the way of a downward axe kick aimed to knock her out. Seems you're not holding back, what's the rules? No kill shots? She asked curiously as she had to dodge Naruto's swift attacks which were enhanced by nature chakra. Thankfully since she had her Byakugan activated, she could see each limb being prepped to attack before it happened as Naruto subconsciously channeled chakra into his limbs to hit harder. Naruto was getting a bit annoyed that someone who had no formal training in the ninja arts or even more than basic combat was easily dodging him. Yeah, though we can't really test each other's limits if we hold back, can we? He asked lightly as he turned fully back around from a roundhouse kick which Kaguya had ducked under, causing Naruto to grin a bit. Kaguya beeped her head curiously as to why Naruto was grinning, then she noticed the surge of chakra into his leg. She had done exactly what he wanted. It was hard to recover or dodge from an attack while crouched like this, so she brought her arms up to block the attack. Good plan if I was anyone else. She said with her own faint grin as she caught Naruto's leg, tripping his other leg by extending her leg towards Naruto's leg he was using to stand quickly. Naruto's eyes widened a bit as the ground began approaching quickly after he was tripped. You're pretty good so far, but let's see how you like this too. Naruto exclaimed as he tapped into Kurama's chakra, cloaking him a golden aura of his Rakuto Sennin form, minus the truth orbs for now. He disappeared from Kaguya's grip, appearing a few feet away from Kaguya in a flash of gold, cracking his knuckles with his trademark foxish grin on his face. Kaguya was a bit she became aware how warm and caring the chakra was that was coming off of Naruto. Is that really Kurama's chakra? She asked softly, as she hadn't paid it any attention, or moreover couldn't when they were fighting during the war. Though she just couldn't believe the furball as she called him could produce any feeling aside from pure hatred. Naruto's slit iris across his eyes became more pronounced, and his features became more feral as a cue that Kurama was in control for now. Yes, Ka-san, that's my true power when my Jinchuriki and I come to team up instead of fighting for dominance. Kurama said, donning his own version of Naruto's foxish grin, but this one was more animalistic compared to Naruto's. Kaguya laughed softly as she stood back up slowly, launching herself at Naruto again, causing him to disappear from view again. Kaguya easily finding Naruto after he reappeared to the Byakugan, Kurama's chakra was like a beacon in a dark night for her. Sending some bone shards from the tips of her fingers at Naruto at a frightening speed. The sound of several metallic clinks were heard as Naruto blocked the bone shards with his kunai. Kinda figured it would be hard to hide in this form from your Byakugan. Naruto mused as he stepped from behind a sand dune, disappearing again before appearing in front of Kaguya again. Hey, Naruto said with a grin, before kissing Kaguya and disappearing again. Kaguya's eyebrow twitched in slight annoyance as he was making fun of her for not being as fast as him by this gesture, like act before pain flared in her upper arm. Reaching up to the spot where the pain came from, she found blood when she pulled her hand back. Well, it has been a long time since anyone has been able to make me bleed. So I commend you on that, only my own son, Hagoromo, landed an actual cut on me. Kaguya said as the wound healed. Naruto had actually been curious to see if she actually bled, as she was literally a goddess incarnate, so he didn't think it was possible for her to bleed. Well, that answers that question. Naruto said with a chuckle before turning back to face Kaguya as they both dashed at each other, causing the ground to spiderweb crack a bit under the force they were using. Kaguya was struggling a bit to keep from being overpowered by Naruto combing sage mode, and Kurama's chakra made him a physical powerhouse without her draining his chakra. Well, this definitely is more fun than last time. Kaguya said with a chuckle, a smile crossing her face. Naruto flashed back a foot or so as a Rasengan formed in his hand with only one hand. He knew even if this actually hit her, it might annoy her at worst. Let's see how you like this one. Naruto thought to himself as he infused some of the Kakuyo's chakra into it. Charging at her, as Kaguya swung at his midsection with her sword, Naruto disappeared again right before contact. Such plus mu Rasengan. Naruto exclaimed as he hit her in her side with the Rasengan. Kaguya's eyes widened a bit as she was sent spiraling towards a tree, hitting it and going through it one more which cracked before falling over. That actually hurt Naruto-kun. Kaguya admonished with a sickly sweet smile on her face with her eyes closed. Naruto's celebration was cut short by the Kai in the area grew as thick as molasses around him. Oh crap, maybe I overdid it. Naruto thought to himself, then just as it had appeared, the Kai disappeared, causing Naruto's eyes to widen as he looked around frantically, trying to figure out where the next attack would come from, as it wasn't that easy for anyone to calm down really. The black portal cracked open the space right behind Naruto, and two arms wrapped around Naruto's waist. Strength of 1000 suplex. Kaguya exclaimed as she bent over backward with Naruto still in her arms, slamming him into the rocks that were below their feet, causing it to crack before bowing into a half circle roughly twice the size of a typical Sakura chakra punch. Kaguya fell through a black portal before appearing in another one a few feet away. Naruto groaned as he peeled himself out of the person-sized crater that he had created, cracking his neck to get the kinks out of it that he had gained from the suplex. Thanks Kurama, that would have seriously hurt if you hadn't softened the ground, Naruto thought as he flashed out of the huge crater Kaguya had created using Naruto. The terse snort was heard end of Naruto's head from the one in question. Well, I couldn't just let you be defeated that easily. Kurama said before laying his head back on his paws. It was easy for Kurama to use his chakra to essentially instantly turn the rock to sand anyway. Kaguya was a bit surprised that Naruto walked away from that still conscious, much less with nothing more than a sore neck. That would take out anyone else, maybe even your friend Sasuke as well. Kaguya mused as she dropped her bone sword. It had started growing cracks in it from their last kunai to bone sword battle, even if it was hardened, it was still bone. Naruto gained a determined look on his face as he noticed that Kaguya was starting to sweat heavily, gaining a grin on his face. This will be a battle of attrition, as we both won't back down and have inhuman stamina. So me subtly adding Kakuyo's chakra into her, causing her temperature to raise and make her sweat, should speed up that process. Naruto thought, his idiotic persona had been dropped when he went into battle. A ninja's best weapon was deception, and his idiotic personality was really just a front until combat made him serious. Kaguya fanned herself a bit as she noticed it was hotter than it was a moment before, and her armor was becoming a bit uncomfortable with the sudden temperature increase. Clever Naruto, using Kakuyo's chakra to raise my internal temperature to make this battle end faster, but it'll take more than that to beat me. She pathetically identified his plan. Naruto scattered his plan being so easily being found out, then again he wasn't very subtle when it came to naming his new Rasengan. Here I was thinking I had managed to pull one over on you. Naruto said with a small chuckle before his hands came out in front of him, his fingers splayed out as a ball of purple and black chakra began to form in front of him. Kaguya beeped an eyebrow at this technique, it seemed familiar, but she couldn't quite place her finger on what it was until she realized it was a powered-down version of what the ten-tail had used to level half of a mountain range. Crap. Bijuu Dama. Kaguya exclaimed mentally as her eyes widened, if she got hit by this, it wouldn't do any serious damage, but it would hurt a lot. Bringing up a hastily thickened wall of bone, she braced for impact. Naruto smirked, as he knew even with only this power level it would go through even a triple Rashomon barrier, so when it got to a satisfying level, he let it loose. Sorry Kaguya-chan, but this is my match. Naruto exclaimed as he watched a Bijuu Dama impact the bone wall. After a few seconds of the devastating attack clearing, an entire sand dune was vaporized along with Kaguya, or so Naruto thought. Oh crap, I really overdid it now. I was sure she could easily survive that. Naruto thought frantically, thinking he had vaporized his fiancée. The melodic laughter was heard as a black portal opened behind Naruto again, feeling the edge of a sharp bone sword against his throat, causing him to relax a bit, only to tense again at the blade. Sorry Naruto-kun, but it seems I win this one, I have to say, that would have hurt a lot, but thankfully my bone wall gave me enough time to get away. Kaguya said from behind Naruto, her right arm's bone pauldron was gone, and her arm was pretty badly singed. Naruto raised his hands as he slowly turned around to face Kaguya with a foxish grin on his face. Well, it does seem I would lose if I hadn't already planned for this. Naruto said, motioning his hand over her shoulder. Behind her was a Naruto clone in base form, with her focusing on his chakra signature. He was banking on the fact she wouldn't notice a basic clone trying to hide his signature. It seems this match is a draw. Naruto said as he put his hands down. The clone had a kunai aimed at Kaguya's kidneys, a hand on the O-ring of the kunai for extra force. Kaguya removed the bone sword from Naruto's neck, letting the bone sword dissipate back into bone shards, blowing away in the wind, causing the clone to disperse himself. It seems it is, that was fun, I haven't had that much fun in a long time Dana, thanks for that. She said with a soft smile as she floated over towards Naruto, actively trying to walk normally soon. Naruto placed both hands behind his head as golden chakra cloak suddenly disappeared as it was deactivated. Hey yeah, that was fun, we have to do that again sometime. Anyway, I see where you can improve upon. You really don't have an actual fighting style, you're using bits and pieces of what you see in battle. That may be good and all most of the time, but if you want to be a real powerhouse, using a fighting style. As far as your movements go, you're rather graceful in your movements. Naruto expertly broke down their fight while trying to think of a style of fighting that would fit for her. I've heard of a martial art style from far out east called Aikido, it's as graceful and fluid as you can get in a fighting style from what I've heard. Sadly, I don't know anyone that trains in it, but the Konoha library does have books on it. Naruto offered. Kaguya thought for a moment and nodded it couldn't hurt to give it a try. Alright, I'll give this Aikido a try. Though as far as you go, your basic combat stance and fighting style is just that. Too basic, I'm guessing the first style you chose you stuck with? She asked curiously, causing Naruto to hang his head in shame, as this was dead on the nail. Well, I know of a martial art called Jachirunkaburt or Muay Thai. It's a lot like your basic brawler fighting style, powerful and fast, using all of your limbs as weapons, not just your fists and feet. Also your jutsu arsenal is way too sparse. Who was your sensei? An idiot to not teach you anything else. Kaguya said in slight annoyance that no one taught her fiancé better than this. Meanwhile, somewhere else in the Leaf Village and near a hot springs, one closet pervert and self-proclaimed super pervert felt pangs of guilt after sneezing. Naruto seemed to sink even further into a depression the more she dismantled his way of fighting. He couldn't lie, she was right, but didn't mean it didn't hurt any less to hear it. Yeah, I've gotta thank them for leaving me so high and dry. Naruto trailed with an edge to his voice as he cracked his knuckles, Kai filling the valley they were in. Though I've never heard of that style, do you think there are some books on it? Naruto asked curiously. Kaguya smiled at this question before summoning a comatose white zetsu, causing Naruto to go on the defensive instantly. Before she flew through the hand seals required for the Ito Tensei, causing a coffin to rise from the ground with a language that Naruto couldn't read on the coffin lid. This is an old friend of mine who can actually teach you Muay Thai. Kaguya said simply as the white zetsu disappeared into the coffin, and a moment later the lid of the coffin fell. Out stepped a tall, lanky, but a bit muscular man with short black hair, which was in a messy hairstyle with a tan skin tone, with a confused look on his face with white bandages around his fists. Internet cookie for anyone who figured out who this was before I tell you who it is. Kaguya. Why am I here? I thought I died in the battle against Hagoromo. How are you here as well? The man said in a language that Naruto couldn't make heads or tails of even if he was speaking at a slower pace than he currently was. Naruto's eyebrows furrowed, as the only time that he had seen a man like this was when he was in Kumo, where they had more dark-skinned people than he was used to. Who is this Kaguya? Naruto asked curiously, obviously out of the loop on who her old friend was. Kaguya turned to Naruto as she spoke. This, my darling, is Japanese Urim, or Tony Jaa as he's better known, renowned martial artist in his homeland. I met him in my travels across the world to find a way to bring an end to the bloodshed in my ear. Kaguya said a bit sadly, a frown coming across her face, but it disappeared as fast as it had come across her face as she turned to Tony to speak with him as well, using his native language. Tony, this is my fiancé, Naruto. He would like you to train him in the ways of Jachirunkaburt. Would you mind training him for me? Kaguya asked with a soft smile, losing Naruto entirely as he didn't understand the language. Tony donned a contemplative look on his face for a few moments before nodding and looking at Naruto. We will start training tomorrow, got it? He said, confusing Naruto even further because he knew that Tony was referring to him but still didn't understand him. Naruto looked over to Kaguya for help and for her to translate before he said anything that made him look like a blundering idiot. It seems he asked me a question, but what did he say? Naruto asked curiously as his gaze flickered back over to Tony for a moment. Kaguya sighed a bit, she was going to have to teach Naruto a dead language as well. This is going to be fun. Kaguya thought sarcastically to herself. He says you will begin your training tomorrow, and I hope you've been keeping your sleeping habit up. Because Tony liked to train at the ass crack of dawn. Or 4 AM in normal terms. Kaguya said simply, causing Naruto to face fault. Even during his shinobi training, the earliest he got up was 6 AM. Tony turned back to Kaguya after inspecting Naruto for a few moments. He seems weak-willed, do you think he can handle the toughness of Muay Thai training? Tony asked her. Naruto couldn't help but feel he had just been insulted by the slightly taller man. Alright, well, let's hope he can keep up with my ungodly Uzumaki stamina. Naruto exclaimed confidently before poking his chest with a balled fist, with his thumb pointing towards his heart. Kaguya couldn't help but giggle at his sudden change from moody to exuberant in the span of less than a minute. Well, he's one of the people who helped me stop the warring era, so I'll let you be the judge of that. Kaguya said with a smile on her face at Naruto's second face fault. Naruto groaned, this was going to be just like the time when he went on the 3-year training trip with Jiraiya, training until he was sore and broken. It didn't help that his teacher was undead and technically didn't have to rest at all. Alright, let's get back to home. Shikamaru and Sasuke are probably raising hell trying to figure out how a Hokage just disappears from their view. Naruto droned on, his clone had run out of chakra about an hour ago and returned his memories to him, so he knew that Sasuke and Shikamaru knew about the switch now. Kaguya nodded and opened the portal. On the other side it showed the Hokage's office as they all stepped through the portal back into Naruto's dimension. Well, seems we will both have some explaining to do now. Kaguya said as the Anbu hopped down from the ceiling, the tips of their swords pointed at Kaguya's throat, ready to kill her, but then they saw Naruto. Tony raised an eyebrow to this sight after dropping into his Muay Thai stance, ready to take them on at a moment's notice for threatening his friend before he slowly relaxed as well. Naruto waved off his Anbu guard who disappeared back into the rafters after the all clear was given by their leader. Shikamaru, Sasuke, you can come in now, I know you're skulking right outside my door. Naruto said with a bit of an annoyed sigh as he sat behind his desk and began on working on the paperwork his clone left behind, which thankfully wasn't much. The two in question stumbled through the door over each other as they blundered their way back into the room. The first to speak was Sasuke. What were you doing leaving the village, dope? I couldn't even sense your chakra in Hai no Kuni, where the hell did you go that quickly? Also, who is he? Sasuke asked with his usual even and cool tone to his voice. Pointing his thumb towards Tony who was standing there looking around at the room. Though as long as Naruto had known him, he could hear a bit of concern he doubted anyone else noticed. Shikamaru remained silent for the time being, but his question was the same as Sasuke's, but it was too much of a drag to ask him the same question for no reason. Naruto sighed in annoyance, he was hoping he could have put off explaining why he disappeared for now, so they wouldn't keep a closer eye on him. Though it did not seem to be in the cards for him. Well, for your first question, I went to one of Kaguya's dimensions to have some alone time with my fiancé and spar, along with gaining a new sensei. Naruto said simply, his eyes flickering over to Tony as to show who his new sensei was. He will be teaching me Muay Thai. Any other questions? Naruto asked, steeping his hands together intertwined as he rested his chin on his interlaced fingers with a slightly bored look on his face. Shikamaru was the one to speak up this time. Muay what? What is that? Shikamaru asked curiously, he had read every book in the library being especially bored with no missions, but even he didn't know what it was that Naruto was talking about. Sasuke nodded at this, the more questions Naruto answered, the more questions popped up in its place. Sasuke could already feel a headache coming on. Kaguya was the one to answer this question, as she was probably the only one left alive bar Tony on the account of being technically dead that knew of the style. It's a dead form of martial arts that is derived from a country that no longer exists. It was considered one of the deadliest styles in the world during my time. Kaguya explained, causing Sasuke to sigh, like he thought, these answers just brought more questions the more they answered their question. Sasuke's eyebrow twitched in annoyance, his best friend and self-proclaimed rival was always getting into the most out of situations. Even as Hokage this still didn't seem to change his charge head first into the situation attitude. You're still a dope, you know that right? Sasuke asked rhetorically, causing Naruto to gain a tick mark on his forehead at this comment. Naruto wanted to throw something at Sasuke for bringing back up his old nickname, but it brought back a feeling of nostalgia, so he decided against it. Yeah, and you're still a team, you know. Naruto replied with a grin on his face, causing Sasuke to gain a tick mark as well. Both of them tried to hold back their laughter, but failed, confusing literally everyone in the room, as they weren't in on the inside joke between the two friends, though Sasuke was the first to recover. Well, I'd say something like don't leave without telling anyone where you're going again. But we all know you wouldn't listen anyway, Sasuke trailed a bit annoyedly. Naruto grew a smirk on his face at this comment. You're damn right too. Don't go telling your leader what to do. Naruto exclaimed, he knew pulling the rank card was a bit of an ass move, but he finally beat Sasuke in something they both had been trying for. So sue him if he felt rubbing it in was a little bit deserved all things considered. Sasuke decided to let him have this little victory over him, otherwise they might end up tearing up the countryside with their titan-like battles, and he didn't feel like making a bad impression after getting back to the village. Alright, well, I'm going to go and handle some business, send a toad for me, should you need me to come back quickly. Sasuke said, opening a portal looked like a mix between Tobi's spatial distortion jutsu and Kaguya's portal, showing the Uchiha hideout as his destination, probably to finish some unfinished business. Naruto's gaze flickered over to Shikamaru, non-verbally referring the question to him, and Shikamaru seemed to get the idea, shoving his hands into his pockets and leaving the room. Alright, now that is settled, Kaguya. Naruto said, gaining her attention before speaking again. Check out the library with Kuma-san and look for any books on Aikido. If they have any questions, tell them it's a request from the Hokage. Naruto simply said, and the Anbu with a mask resembling a bear appeared in front of Naruto's desk, kneeling down before standing up and moving over to Kaguya, placing a hand on her shoulder and shunching to the library. Naruto's eyes flickered over to Tony, who was looking around in amazement at where the Anbu had appeared out of seemingly thin air. Placing a hand on Tony's shoulder, he disappeared in a flash, reappearing in the Hokage's mansion guest room. "Stay here," Naruto simply said, hoping that the man would at least understand that much. It wouldn't do good for an Edo Tensei to be wandering around an unknown village, it could start all kinds of panic and more paperwork. Tony just nodded, at least understanding that past their language barrier as he lay down on the queen-sized futon laid out for guests. Still looking in amazement as Naruto disappeared from sight again, leaving He-Man alone in the room in a foreign country. Meanwhile back with Naruto. Naruto sighed as he sat behind his desk again, grabbing his pen and began signing off on more paperwork, though looking at his signature, he realized it was atrocious. He'd never really thought about it until now. Maybe I'll get Kaguya-chan to help me improve my handwriting as well. Naruto mused with a chuckle before he did his signature jutsu, and 10 clones popped into existence as he turned around in his chair, leaving the clones to their jobs. Fiddling with a long lock of his hair. Maybe I should let my hair grow out, I look even more like dad, haha. Naruto thought to himself as he stared out the window overlooking the village in all of its glory. It had been destroyed 2 times, but it bounced back better than ever. Naruto normally never dreamt, much less had a nightmare, though tonight his dreams were filled with nightmares. They kept repeating one theme, everything as far as the eye could see was desolate and lifeless. With the bodies of his friends and loved ones stretched out in front of him, as if on display for him and any others to see. What the heck? Naruto exclaimed out in his dream, then a moment later, he felt a powerful killing intent behind him, though the killing intent seemed familiar. It was also different, deeply cold and a bit crazed, if Naruto had to put a name to it. Though he didn't have much time to think as the killing intent intensified, forcing him to his knees and making it hard for Naruto to breathe. The creator of the killing intent floated around to be in front of Naruto, just from the slow way they came around. You knew that they relished seeing Naruto being forced into the kneeling position. "See, is this not simpler, is this not your rightful place?" The voice boomed out, sounding so familiar yet distorted my rage and insanity that it was almost unrecognizable. The origin of the voice bent down and cupped Naruto's chin, forcing him to look up at them. "Look upon the pain that you have wrought, you should have left me sealed up, you brought this upon yourself." The now discerned voice of the insane Kaguya exclaimed, all but screaming at him, but a twisted smirk crossed her face. "Don't worry, you'll get to join them as soon as you provide me one." Tiny little thing, she sneered at Naruto, her insane side hated all humans, but she rubbed her belly to punctuate her point. Naruto's eyes widened in horror as even someone as dense as him could figure out what she meant by that motion. It was only horror due to the fact he hadn't thought about that before. Was his Kaguya only pretending to not be hopelessly insane to get probably the most powerful child the realms had ever seen out of him? "Tell me honestly, is this what the other you wants?" He asked, completely forgetting this was his own dream, so any information gained from asking questions to another person in his dream should be taken with a grain of salt. As it was essentially him talking to himself in the form of a nightmare. Kaguya 3 could only shrug her shoulders as this information, regardless if it was the real insane Kaguya or the nightmare version, didn't have the information to give him. "I honestly couldn't tell you, as I don't know myself. Though I can tell you one thing, that her and I are nothing alike. Do not let how you view me skew how you treat her. Because her being me is the only thing I care even a little about. If you hurt her, you will be the second person I kill right after I kill that little pink teammate of yours. I still haven't gotten her back for hitting me with a mountain on the back of my head," Kaguya said angrily as she floated closer to Naruto, slowly humming a soft song that a mother would sing to a child. Though this song was discordant, it sounded very broken and haunted in Naruto's opinion. Back in the waking world. Naruto woke with a start, sucking in a deep and fast breath as his heart rate was elevated, his senses were dialed up to 11 right now. "Oh thank Kami, that was just a nightmare," he trailed off to himself as he looked down at the now wide-awake Kaguya. She had been startled awake when his chest that she had been using as a pillow suddenly filled with air and nearly knocked her off of her comfy spot, wrapped up in a blanket with him. "Kaguya, hey, did I wake you?" "Sorry, I had a nightmare," he said honestly, though if she asked, Naruto didn't think he had the heart to tell her about it right now since she was in it. Kaguya's soft and supple wide eyes flickered back and forth, searching Naruto's face, trying to discern what the nightmare was about without asking about it. "Want to talk about it?" she asked in a soft, concerned voice, her right hand going up and cupping his left cheek, stroking it softly with her thumb as she smiled softly, planting a soft kiss on his lips. Feeling her heart flutter a little at the kiss, her smile widened a bit. Yes, she was aware they had originally married as a way for Naruto to placate her when he thought she was still evil. While originally she had only been doing it for her own selfish means as well, I mean she had been sealed for 1,000 years, so it was about time to play the field again. Though she could legitimately feel herself growing affection for him with each passing moment. Naruto's eyes searched her face, calmer than he was before, though he was looking for any hint of insanity in her eyes. Though his eyes widened a little when he saw something he didn't expect in her eyes. He saw the beginnings of love forming in her eyes. The way the edges of her eyes softened from their concern. Though she didn't have pupils in the conventional sense, them being a different color than the iris. He could see the muscles contract in her eyes, signaling her pupils were dilated. Which was a sure physiological sign someone had true feelings for you. No, it was just a stupid nightmare, I'm sorry for waking you, Kaguya. He trailed with a tired sigh, though he knew he wouldn't be going back to sleep for a while, rubbing his face slightly in frustration at this fact. Lemon happened. The next morning. Kaguya was the first to wake up as a beam of light hit her face, causing her to stir and make a sound of mild annoyance at the fact she was being woken up while she was warm and comfy. That was a very restful sleep, but I don't want to leave Naruto's warm embrace, she mused to herself honestly, then her stomach growled lightly, which was her signal to get her butt up. Sighing softly, Kaguya peeled herself from his embrace. Heading to the kitchen to make them both some breakfast. Humming softly as she noticed that she was only in one of Naruto's shirts. So she opened a portal to the other side of the room in order to get to the window and close it as his shirt was just barely covering her butt. Though she decided to cook okonomiyaki for the two of them. I hope Naruto likes this, it's been a long while since I've made these. She thought to herself, deciding to make Naruto breakfast in bed since he had been training so hard recently. She began humming a tune as she cooked, she had long since stopped floating. Though it looked like she was floating around the kitchen with how she glided effortlessly throughout. Once it was finished, she set up 2 plates on a tray, some orange juice and headed back to the room. Dana 3, breakfast is ready. She said softly as she used her butt to push the door open and not risk dropping it. Naruto groaned lightly at someone calling out to him to wake him up, it took his brain a few seconds to process that it was Kaguya. Though it registered in his mind that she had called him Dana. So he sat up groggily and smelled the delicious food, and his stomach growled at the prospect of a home-cooked meal. Thank you, Kaguya-chan, it looks delicious. He said with a low rumble to his voice as he had just woken up. As Kaguya sat down, he leaned over and planted a soft but affectionate kiss on her lips, smiling in the middle of the kiss. He felt his heart skip a beat as he kissed her. A spark had traveled down his spine as well, his eyebrows furrowed as he contemplated what this could mean. As much as he claimed he loved Sakura when he was younger, he didn't truly know what it meant. He had just latched onto the first person to show him any kind of kindness that he didn't see as a parental figure. Though after a fair bit of contemplation he finally figured out what it meant. I think I am falling for you, Kaguya. He admitted honestly, looking her in the eyes as he did. Kaguya's eyes widened a considerable margin when he said that she had been thinking about the fact that she basically held his head down with a shotgun and made him marry her. Which is why she was trying to make this as pleasant of an experience as possible, though she had started to develop a bit of feelings for him too. She never thought he would return them. I'm ecstatic to hear that, Naruto, I've been slowly falling for you for a while, ever since you actually started treating me like I wasn't just an enemy alien. She said honestly, smiling as she did, the smile even reached her eyes as they beamed the affection she had for the knuckle-headed ninja that had suddenly found his way into her heart. She could tell at first that he was just faking it, hoping she didn't snap. She could tell from the tone of his voice and how his eyes were locked with hers at the moment, it was the truth. Naruto was a bit surprised by this, he figured it was a strong possibility that she would fall for him, as he seemed to have an inexplicable charm with the ladies he couldn't quite understand. He honestly wished he could control it at several points. Though he had the most powerful woman in existence as his wife. So he wasn't going to complain about her truly developing feelings for him, plus she was a lot of fun in the bedroom. Thank you, Kaguya-chan, he trailed softly. Kaguya furrowed her eyebrows lightly in confusion as to what he was thanking her for. Thank you for being truly here for and fully present in our marriage. Yes, it may have all been an act at first, but I have come to appreciate your company, Kaguya-chan. He said honestly as he took her hand in his and gave it a gentle yet affectionate squeeze before he took a bite of his food and let out a pleased sound. Kaguya smiled at the pleased sound Naruto made as he took his first bite of the food that she made. Yes, they had been together for about a week now, though they rarely had any time to spend together to enjoy their meals together. Though Kaguya frowned as she felt a presence outside the apartment. Judging by the high chakra levels, it was easily one of the Anbu security details for the Hokage. I know you're waiting at the door, if you're gonna come in, come in. She called out over the shoulder in mild annoyance that their good and romantic atmosphere had been broken by Naruto's duties. The Anbu didn't bother knocking since he was hailed into the apartment and went straight to where the voice came from. Hokage-sama, Kaguya-san, I'm sorry for the intrusion, but the civilian council is asking for your presence in the Hokage's office. He said, trying to keep any emotion out of his voice. Because though they were just speculation and rumors, the word around the training yard was that Kaguya was the perpetrator behind the Tsukune-sama. For though they wouldn't dare speak badly about the Hokage's wife, especially since it was mere speculation, and only the Hokage and his team knew what truly happened after they all fell under the genjutsu, as this was still a dictatorship, and he could have them executed if he so wished. The civilian council and his council was merely for show. Naruto let out a mild sound of annoyance as he adjusted the covers on the blanket to make sure he was decent before he looked at the Anbu operative. I will be there in a bit, please tell the civilian council that they cannot demand my presence at any point in time just because they want to. He said with slight annoyance as he continued to eat his food. He glanced at the position of the sun outside the window and face faulted. What could they possibly want at 6 a.m.? He asked curiously and in mild annoyance. The Anbu didn't respond for a moment as he figured out how he should broach the subject before deciding to just rip the band-aid off. They want to know when the next Kage summit will be. Because after the fight with Madara and Obito, it has brought peace to the forefront of everyone's minds. As they realized all their petty squabbles in the past have amounted to nothing. They're mostly just happy that they still have their free will, thanks to you and the new Densetsu no Sanin. 5 he said honestly as he saluted Naruto before disappearing in a swirl of leaves, leaving the two lovebirds in peace once again. Kaguya raised a curious eyebrow to what the Anbu said about Naruto and his team, though when she thought about it. As far as the Anbu knew, they had defeated Madara in fair combat. Well, it was better that it stayed that way. Kaguya knew all too well what happened when the people found an enemy to rally behind. Sounds fairly mundane, it sounds like they just want to give you their thanks in person, since you've been sending a clone to work every day. She mused with a small giggle at his easy way to get out of the job. It wasn't like he was skipping out on being their leader. Once the clone poofed, Naruto still got all the memories from the clone, so it was just as good as him being there. Though Kaguya's eyebrows furrowed a bit as she thought about this. Naruto had told her it was his dream to be Hokage, so it finally clicked in her head that it was a bit odd he was here all the time. Naruto, be completely honest with me, I believe you when you say that you have feelings for me. I can read chakra flows to detect if someone is lying or not. Though are you here with me because you want to be? Or that you feel like you need to be? She asked honestly with a bit of edge to her tone as this was a sensitive topic. Naruto was caught off guard by the question, but he had figured it was coming at some point due to their unusual marriage. Though deciding to be tactful for once in his life, he simply nodded for speaking. At first I was just doing it because I felt I had to, because I'm one of only 3 people who could even hope of standing toe-to-toe with you if you ever decided to keep up with the attack. He admitted honestly, pausing for a moment as he gave her hand a gentle but firm squeeze as he held her gaze. Though as I've gotten to know you more and more. I just want to be around you, to learn more about you. You're an untapped wealth of knowledge from an era that has barely any surviving records of. There is so much I could learn from you. He continued as he took a moment to catch his breath before restarting. I want to be around you Kaguya-chan, not only to learn from you, but because you know I have feelings for you. That and he trails off with a bright red blush. Kaguya could infer what Naruto was trying to say, though she wanted to tease him a bit just because she could. What was that Naruto? I missed part of that. She teased lightly with a playful grin on her face. This caused Naruto to blush an even deeper shade of red, to the point metaphorical steam was coming out of his ears. You can tell me anything Naruto, I've heard you sleep talking before. I'm sure it couldn't be any more embarrassing than that. She said, distracting him from his previous embarrassment. Naruto was curious as to what she had heard while he was sleeping, though it wasn't the time for that. He stuck his tongue out at her teasing before he gathered up the mental energy to repeat what he trailed off with. Though as soon as he was about to speak, Kaguya began poking his side gently while asking him what he said in a teasing tone. He could tell it was playful banter. Though he tried his best not to smile as she did it, turning his head so she couldn't see his smile. I'd stop poking me if I were you. He warned playfully, turning back to her, not hiding his smile this time. Though she kept poking his sides until he finally decided enough was enough, with speed that would even give Sharingan a run for its money. Naruto gently grabbed both of her hands, spinning her around and gently pulling her arms across her chest, pinning them down lightly to her side. Ha ha, I won. Naruto exclaimed lightly with his signature foxish grin on his face. Kaguya was caught a bit off guard by how fast he had disarmed her, though she was flexible, pushing her arms and his arms above their heads. She flipped over him and put him in the same position that he had just put her in. No, I win. She exclaimed lightly with a giggle, though Naruto surprised her yet again he quickly powered out of her grip. Gently grabbing her wrists as he spun around and pinned her down to the bed with her hands above her head. Well, that backfired quickly. She trailed jokingly as she tried to sit up to continue their play fight. Flailing her legs cutely as Naruto straddled her waist to make sure he held her down. "Shouldn't I be the one riding you?" she asked in a slight tone, biting her bottom lip in an attempt to distract him from his grip on her wrists. It worked, but only for a moment, though that was all that Kaguya needed. Soon Naruto felt her hands on his sides. Then all of a sudden he was on his back instead of her being on her back. "Well then, not many people can beat me in a wrestling match," he mused with a chuckle as he got his breathing back under control after their play wrestling match. "Though as much as I'd like to continue our fun little game, I'm needed in my office as I haven't sent a clone yet, and it's occasionally nice of me if I show up," he said honestly, feeling a bit bad as this caused Kaguya to lightly pout, though she still got off of Naruto. Kaguya playfully glared at the blonde and said with a half-teasing, half-serious tone to her voice, "You better bring me some flowers on the way home," she lightly exclaimed as Naruto got out of the bed and started getting dressed. Grabbing his Rokudaime Hokage cloak and hat, Kaguya had to admit he looked damn good in it. Naruto let out a light chuckle before coming back over to the bed for one last affectionate kiss before he left. "Tell you what, if you bring me lunch, then we'll go out and pick you flowers together," he said honestly as he put the hat on. Though before giving Kaguya a chance to respond, he disappeared in a swirl of leaves to his office, making it all but assured that Kaguya would come rescue him from the hell that is paperwork. The end. So how was this part? I hope you like it. And if you like it, share this part with your friends and like the video too. And don't forget to subscribe our channel for daily awesome fanfiction. Okay, it's time for me to go. Bye bye.